Hi loves. In this video, I want to talk about 4 of the biggest reasons that we lie to ourselves. If you really take a good look at this, you might be surprised at how often we do this. This doesn't make you a bad person. It's human nature, and I'm going to share with you the 4 most common reasons why we aren't able to accept a truth and why we lie to ourselves instead. There's a term called cognitive dissonance, and it refers to a way that we deny the truth at all costs because it would challenge a belief system, our lifestyle, somebody or something that we're very loyal to, and how we relate to that. And sometimes those changes are so painful and scary, we can't deal with it. So the brain and the nervous system devises a way to make excuses for or to filter our reality in a way that is congruent with this lie or untruth or incomplete truth that we want to believe because it's easier. Our bodies react to change as a threat. Our system likes to keep things the same and familiar. So any change, especially if it's very drastic, can feel incredibly dysregulating. So, well, okay, that's the main reason we lie to ourselves, and pretty much the other ones kind of fall into that umbrella. Okay, so the first reason that we lie to ourselves is because it's painful. Sometimes a truth that we're given, sometimes something we find out about somebody or a situation or an organization that we're involved in, it hurts a lot. The truth hurts, or the truth will piss you off and then it will set you free. We've all heard these sayings, right? And I'm sure you've experienced that before, probably many, many times. So, what happens in our bodies is that this is a nervous system thing again. We are wired to seek pleasure and avoid pain. Usually, pain indicates danger. And as human beings, we are wired to avoid pain at all costs. So, if you think about anything in life that you don't want to do, you probably have pain attached to it, or an idea of pain, or a thought that this is going to hurt, it's going to be hard, so I don't want to do it. And our animal bodies will do anything to avoid it. The second reason that we lie to ourselves is because oftentimes we would have to do something very hard if we accept this truth. So, this is a really big one, right? Like, if I am in a relationship with a partner or a friend or a colleague who I have learned is abusive, either to myself or to another friend, then that means I'm going to have to do something really hard. Either confront them, or I'm going to have to leave the relationship. I might have to leave my job or a housing situation, or any number of really difficult, life changing things that can feel incredibly overwhelming and scary in the moment. And so it's easier for the mind to just ignore it. Like, the amount of change that would have to occur, or the difficulty of what I would have to accomplish in order to align myself with this new information of truth, is so overwhelming and so intense, and I might not have the time for it. I might be so overwhelmed with what I already have going on in life that I just can't compute all of the moving factors that would have to take place if I had to adjust around this new truth, right? So it's so much easier for the brain to be like, I'm just going to put that over there and pretend that doesn't exist, right? I mean, if you think about it, like, have you done this before? I mean, I know I have many times. We want to think positively, and that's a beautiful virtue, and we want to give people the benefit of the doubt and multiple chances. And while that's good to maybe do one time, if a situation keeps proving itself to be problematic, then oftentimes we're faced with the reality that we have to change things, and change is hard. The third reason that we often lie to ourselves is meaning making. Okay, so we often go to this space, it's usually a more subconscious place, where if this were true, then it would mean this. And usually the meaning that we're making is something that is very painful or connected to a childhood wound or connected to some sort of insecurity. Okay, so say for instance, there's a person that you like, or maybe you've been dating them for a while and they don't seem to be reaching out to you or they don't seem to be responding to you. And instead of acknowledging a truth of like, oh, this person just might not like me very much or might not see themselves compatible or they just might not be a good fit, we tend to tell ourselves like, oh, well, if that were true, right? So sometimes we lie to ourselves and say, oh, well, they just must be busy or they don't know me well enough yet. Sound familiar? And so instead of just accepting like, oh, this person and I just, we don't jive, or they're just not that into me. Um, Seems easy, like if that's a natural fact, like this person just doesn't really like you as much as you want them to, like that's just factual. There's nothing personal in that. However, it becomes really hard to accept when we make that mean that there's something wrong with us or that we're not good enough or attractive enough or a number of reasons that we might be insecure about ourselves. That can be really painful. And so it's easier, and again, we're avoiding pain here, right? So it's easier for the system to be like, oh, okay, well, start making excuses for why they might be avoiding us or busy or distracted or, have so many things going on when actually they just might be like, not really into it. Um, Same thing with a job opportunity, right? Or, a failed opportunity. If something doesn't work out, or if there's a problem, then it's hard to look at a problem and see it for what it really is when we equate that with some massive failure on our part or an unworthiness on our part or some sort of defectiveness on our part. So it's really important when you notice yourself like fighting a truth or a reality, if you can take a moment to listen in a little bit deeper and hear the voices. They're very quiet, they sound like whispers, but hear like what you're saying inside your own head. And if it's saying a narrative like, oh, well, like usually it's that fear, right? There's that deep sense of fear, like, oh gosh, if I acknowledge this truth, then, yeah. And then ask yourself, what does that mean to you? What would that mean if this were true? And from that place, you'll often find the root insecurity that this reality is bringing up for you and be able to work on it from there. The fourth reason that we often lie to ourselves is blind loyalty. So, loyalty is a virtue, it's a really beautiful thing. It keeps us together and connected. It brings about trust in friendships and relationships and organizations. However, there can be a shadow side to loyalty when it comes to when there's something wrong and we're not able to see it or acknowledge it, right? We see this oftentimes in cases of abuse or assault or, shady things happening in an organization. It's very hard if we are invested in a person or an organization or a group or anything that we love and are connected to. If we hear something nefarious or bad or sketchy going on with these people or things, then it's very, very hard to accept that truth, right? Because there's so many things. And again, this is a meaning making, right? This is another good example of the last point where it's like, oh, well, if that were true, then that means that I'm somehow complacent in this bad thing happening, or I somehow contributed to this bad thing, or my judgment of character is off point, or I'm actually in danger, or like look how I can support something that's dangerous, right? Those are all very hard things to accept. And again, that's like the meaning making, but there's also that loyalty aspect to it where when something that we love so much and we're dedicated to, when we hear, like, oh, this person has actually been abusive or harmful in this way, or this organization has been, like laundering money or, harming people, then we don't, it's like really hard to look that in the eye and be like, oh wow, okay, okay, that's true. I accept that. If we're like so identified, you see this with cults all the time. There was recently this story that came out about a cult that was harming people, and I watched. I psychology, especially group psychology, really fascinates me, and so I got to see people share their stories who had been, abused by this group of people. And then there were people who were involved in this cult, this practice, and they, at all costs were defending these people and then getting angry at the people who called them out, and then even getting angry at the people who, were victims of abuse by this group. And it's just wild to see, like when people are that invested. And maybe they only have good experiences. We often do when it's hard to see the truth. Like, usually, when someone else is being abused by someone that we love or that we trust and we've never seen that behavior from before, it's really hard to believe that other person. And oftentimes, because it's painful, and then the meaning making behind it, we kind of double down on our disbelief and don't want to see the truth in it. We could go on a whole rabbit hole here, but I'll try to keep it brief. Yeah, this is often why, like abuse victims are not believed, because it's really hard to believe and the truth hurts, and it would mean a lot of intense things. Like, I had an experience not long ago where I was assaulted at a party. Some kicked my feet out from underneath me and I fell on the ground, and I was around about 20 friends, but no one, like, it happened in front of everyone's eyes, but like no one responded to it, almost because they didn't want to believe that it was happening, because it would mean that any person could be assaulted at a friendly gathering, where everyone means well. And that would mean that they're in danger of that too. And so it was a wild experience to me to see these people that, I love and care about actually completely just avoid the situation and kind of almost pretend like it didn't even happen. It just went over their heads. And yeah, I sat with it for a while, like, what the fuck was that? Like, what? How does that even happen? But, from what I understand about the way that our psychology works is that we don't want to see pain. We don't want to believe that a person that would normally not act that way, like, would behave that way. Like, that's a scary thing. Like, there was, a loyalty component there. And then, yeah, what it would mean, right? Like, that this could happen in a supposedly safe container. Someone could like be assaulted and get seriously injured. It was crazy. I did leave the party and then come back and address the situation, and then I was supported. From that, it wasn't like it, just was all ignored. But I did have to, come forward and speak out about it. But still, it was wild. So yeah, deep stuff. I'm curious what you think about this. If you have a story to share, or if you resonate with any of these topics, feel free to drop a comment. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.